And good evening, everybody, and welcome to Going Nuclear, full-blown coverage of the land here on the Fanatical Elves Network, a part of the Fans First Sports Network. I'm Ethan Greenberg. Alongside of me is my co-host, Mike Rasinski. Also joining us tonight is our guest, Lance Riesland, as well as my fellow co-host from the Best Doggone Podcast in the land, Heather and Jacob, the Browns mock draft expert extraordinaire here of some sort. Or he's either a dunce or an expert. I'm not sure which one it is, guys.
We'll find out in 3 days, I guess.
Yes. Well, 3 days.
4 days when it's concluded.
Okay, Mike. I wanted to make that, but anyhow, thank you everybody for joining in here this evening. Lance, brought you on because it's 2 days or so, about 2 days from now, right about this time, we should know who the Browns have drafted, or they'll be on the clock if they stay at number 2. As you've gone through the draft season since the end of the college football season, and you've looked and you've scoured across, how many hours of film have you watched?
Oh, it's a lot. At this point, it's a lot. At this point, I don't even know, but we're a number of deep. We're 10, 20 deep at each position, and just trying to find. That day 3 is always the interesting day, right? We all kind of know who's going to be taken day 1, even into day 2. Those days, I think, where the Browns need to hit, where a lot of teams need to hit, but especially the Browns, they need to hit on that day 3. Rounds 4 through 7, they got to be much better there. So those are kind of the guys I've been looking at. And there's some positions of need that they can get some quality players on day 3 in this draft at positions of need.
Okay, so last time when you came on to the Best Doggone Podcast with Heather and I, we were talking quarterbacks at that time. We were talking a lot of stuff, and I've watched again a lot of your work. And folks, if you don't know Lance, he contributes to Cleveland.com. He talks on the Orange and Brown. It's the Orange and Brown podcast. Or is it Orange and Brown Talk? What is the official name of it, Lance? I should know.
It's the Orange and Brown Talk Podcast.
Talk Podcast. Okay. And so you're on there with Dan Labby and Mary Kay Cabot and Ashley Bastock of Cleveland.com. And then you're also on 92.3 The Fan. So you're all over the place. You've got the coaching background. You've done all this. But we were talking a lot about quarterbacks last time.
Correct.
And and everything you said, you like Shedeur Sanders. You said that maybe Cam Ward has a higher ceiling, but Shedeur has a lower floor.
Yeah.
As things have gone along, has that position changed at all from an overall perspective?
No, my top 2 guys have still been Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, and I still think, I've had a lot of people say to me, why would you not take Cam Ward? I do think Cam Ward has a higher ceiling, and everyone has said to me, why would you not take Cam Ward if you said he has a higher ceiling? Because I think Shedeur Sanders is close enough to him talent-wise, and he fits the scheme. And you don't ever want to take a quarterback that fits the scheme unless that quarterback is very close to the quarterback who has a high ceiling, right? So for me, Shedeur Sanders is everything that Kevin Stefanski likes within structure of his offense, right? So his ability to throw from the pocket, his play action ability, he's very, very tough. And for me, anticipation and accuracy are always the top 2 things I look at quarterbacks. My fourth quarterback have changed. But the top 2 guys have stayed there, and Shedeur Sanders is still, if they were to stay on Thursday, they're taking Shedeur Sanders. I would not be upset about that. Quarterback position, you guys are just like me. We all watch the position. There's no position that I've been more wrong on the last couple of years than quarterback, just like everybody else. So the thing you can't measure with quarterback is that it factor and the things they can bring and how they take care of their body and all the things it take to be a pro quarterback. But I still think Shedeur Sanders is the best fit. Them taking Flacco, I don't think they're going to go that route anymore. But if I'm taking a quarterback, Shedeur Sanders is my number 1 guy without question.
Don't you think it's a moot point, though? Because, the Browns are, why would you take Shedeur over Cam Ward? Because Cam Ward's not going to be available at number 2.
Well, yeah, it's once again, I think they're so close. And for me, I've looked at it differently because I think scheme matters, right? I think scheme and what you do, it matters. And them having confidence in Kevin Stefanski and what he does, and him getting the keys back, and him bringing in Tommy Rees, who is a tight end guy and a pro style guy, that tells me that Kevin Stefanski is going to get the keys That doesn't mean he will. That's just kind of the route that kind of everybody's going, right? So for me, they have to win this year, and they need. If they take Shedeur Sanders at 2, it tells me they think he could be the quarterback of the future. I've also said in the last couple of days, especially if they're not high on any of these quarterbacks, then pass, right? Because they got Flacco, they got Pickett, pass because you have a number of holes. I like my third guy right now is Tyler Shuck, and I love Tyler Shuck. He's 26 years old. People kind of don't like him because of his age, but for me, I don't look at age. I don't look at anything else besides what I try to stick to what I do, which is kind of watch the film. And Tyler Shuck's highly productive, but he's also a great scheme for Kevin Stefanski. So I just think if they're going to go with these quarterbacks, none of them stand out in terms of Andrew Luck, right? Or none of them stand out like Caleb Williams. But I think there's guys you can win with. Maybe not guys you win because of. They're going to have to decide what route they're going. I've always said the only bad plan is no plan. And as long as they can if they have what they're, stick with. If you think, Shedeur Sanders is your guy, then go with it. Have confidence in what you do because that, like I said, it doesn't matter what all of us think. It's matter what they think. And for me, obviously signing Joe Flacco was big, but Joe Flacco's 41 years old, and there's going to be some issues. Everybody thinks he's going to have that magic, and he might. But stats tell you after the age of 40, it's very tough to be a good quarterback in the NFL.
Don't you think, though, that with Flacco, and I'm sorry I'm dominating, but I like this debate because don't you think that with Flacco and Kenny Pickett, that there's a bigger upside with getting a Travis Hunter or even an Abdul Carter at number 2 and then taking a risk on a second or third round quarterback on, and I don't want to set Ethan off, but like a Jackson Dart or a Will Howard or a Milroe, because Stefanski is he's a very good quarterback guy. So I think he can fit schemes, and especially a Jalen Milroe because of the offensive coordinator, because of our coaching staff now. So don't you think there's a bigger upside in maybe taking a chance on a later round quarterback?
Well, it's interesting because, and once again, I don't remember a year in maybe the last 5 or 10 where the description or the breakdown of quarterbacks by all of us who kind of look at a lot of film, how different they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And especially after the first 2. So for me, I like Tyler Shuck better than I like all the guys you mentioned, but I understand. Now, for me, Jackson Dart is too inconsistent. His footwork within the pocket is not very good. Jalen Milroe kind of reminds me, my comp was 2020 Watson, right? And the reason I say that is because his ability to improvise. That has not seemed to be very good in Kevin Stefanski's offense. Will Howard, for me, is a guy because he was really hard. He's a hard evaluation because he plays with such talent. And when you watch a lot of his throws, like in the playoff, everybody said he played great in the playoffs, and he did. And I will take nothing away from a quarterback's leadership because that's very vital. But in terms of arm and what he did, he threw a lot of passes behind the line of scrimmage and a lot of passes vertical. And that in the NFL, I want to see those chunk plays, those 15 to 25-yard chunk plays on the bang eights and the dig routes and the comebacks and things like that. So not saying he can't do it. It's just something he didn't have to do at Ohio State. So I just think if they're not going to take a guy at 2 and they don't think a guy at 33 or 67 or anywhere else can be a guy that leads them to the future, or they think as a guy that they can get to be the guy, then don't waste the pick because you have holes at other positions. And I do think Flacco can bridge it. I do think I'm a lot higher in Kenny Pickett just because I think Kenny Pickett within the right system, a structured system. He's not a guy who's going to do a lot of things on his own, but he is a guy. Small hands Kenny, right? But he is a guy within a system. If the Browns go back to 12 and 13 personnel, there's a lot to be said about getting the team into the right run play, understanding the fronts, being able to throw the ball in the whack, the levels concept. So there's things that, a quarterback with not as much talent, like you were saying, I think Kevin Stefanski has a tremendous ability to get the most out of quarterbacks that maybe don't have a high ceiling. He seems to struggle with quarterbacks who their ceiling is high because of improvising, right? And when you improvise, remember that makes it really tough on the offensive line because you have to block differently, and then you have scramble drill with receivers, and there's a lot that goes into that. And it just seems like he's best within structure. And if you've made the decision to stay with Stefanski, then go out and get him guys that fit his system. That would be my argument with quarterbacks in any other position is if you made the decision to stay with him, which I like, I think he's a great football coach, then get him guys that match what he does, and you'll see what he can do potentially within the offense.
Right.
So on that line of thought, is that what we saw last year? Is that what led to this 3-14 team? Is that they tried to change? It sounds like you're saying you need to pick the player to fit your offense, and it sounds like last year they changed the offense to fit the player, which was Watson, and it turned into a disaster. So is that what we saw last year is the first part of the question? And then to lead on to the second part, which quarterbacks that we all just mentioned actually do fit the system that we have now?
Well, the thing that happened last year, there's a lot of things that go into it. First of all, I give Kevin Stefanski. Well, I go back to Deshaun Watson, right? Everybody has a lot of issues with Deshaun Watson. When they signed Deshaun Watson, I liked the pick. I like what they did. I was not an anti-Baker. I liked Baker too, but they felt that Watson could get him over the top. And as a football coach, I appreciate that. It didn't happen to work out. Now, the thing that they tried to do is Stefanski brought in different guys, right? He brought in a different offensive coordinator. He tried to maximize Watson's talent. But I will tell you this as an offensive coach. Even at the NFL level, you only know what you know. But more importantly, you can only fix what you know. So now Kevin Stefanski was trying to do things that were a little bit outside of his realm, right? He wasn't running that weak side zone. He wasn't running counter. He wasn't running power. He wasn't running the levels concept. They weren't doing a lot of things that got him the job in Cleveland. And not that you can't do that, but I appreciate that because they tried to maximize the talent of the quarterback they had. And it just didn't work out. And to bring in Vrabel, that tells you Kevin Stefanski has a lot. He's very confident in his own skin, right? Because he got Schwartz, he's got Vrabel, he's got all these guys that are trying to, that are really good NFL coaches and been great head coaches. But he was trying to maximize what Watson could do. It just didn't work out. And it is what it is. And you got to move on. It wasn't anybody's fault. Watson just didn't play very well. He had injuries. There's other things.
It was his fault. It was Watson's fault.
Well, and correct. He just didn't play very well, and and injuries didn't help that. And there's other things, but as a football coach, now the guy who I think fits, I think Cam Ward and Shador Sanders are very, very equal. It's 1 and 1A to me, but Shador Sanders for me fits the scheme, right? And what I mean by that is he's within structure, right? He's not the guy who's going to improvise. He's going to go through his progressions. He's going to check it down, and he's going to get rid of the football. He's going to get him in the right run game. They're going to run the ball more on first down and more on 12 and 13 personnel. They're going to run power. They're going to run counter. They're going to run pin and pull. They're going to be a foundational power run game, which will make that offensive line better back to kind of what it was 2 years ago. Everybody thinks the offensive line has regressed, and they have, but they were also doing things that weren't what they were good at. And what they're good at is being physical, especially those interior guys. So if you ask, I think for me, there's a couple guys. I think Shador Sanders fits. I think Cam Ward is a super talent. I think he's about as bad as scheme fit for the Browns just because of his ability to improvise. I think Will Howard is a project, but I think he's a guy who has physical tools. I like Kyle McCord. I think Dylan Gabriel is a guy no one talks about, but I like him. I like him more in the Miami, San Fran kind of scheme where the ball's out quickly and things like that. But a guy that's going to fit is a guy who is within structure, does not have great feet, is not going to do things on his own. A guy who protects the football. If you say I love Flacco coming back, but Flacco's got to protect the football, or they're going to be in the same thing they were this year, right? That last 5 games, he turned the ball over 8 times, and then he had 2 big ones in the playoffs. So that's something he's going to have to work on. If they're going to go back to what Stefanski does, then it's got to be great defense and kick the ball every time you're on offense. You punt it, you kick an extra point, you kick a field goal, and you got a chance to win.
Yeah.
That I like the way you broke that down there. Okay, so you talked about Milroe maybe not being a fit, but it really appears all the steam, all the smoke that we've been hearing out of Berea and such, it sure as heck sounds like they're gonna go Hunter at 2. We could all be flabbergasted and fooled and hoodwinked here and watch out for Andrew Berry at a poker game. But he sure makes it sound like they're going to go Travis Hunter, and it sounds like Ward is going at 1 to the Titans. So with that in mind, let's say decide, okay, we're not going to trade up out of 33, and Sanders is gone. But they're talking, it seems like there's that connection with Tommy Reese and Jalen Milroe. If they went with Milroe, is there enough, because of the connection with Tommy Reese and his physical tools, is that where really good coaching has to come into play to get his mechanics right and to learn with and to work with him to make him a great option down the road?
Well, DeBoer came in from Washington to Alabama, and DeBoer ran a very, very good scheme at Washington, but it's a totally different scheme for him this year. So that's one thing that happened with Milroe. Now he has those physical tools, and it's not about 32 teams liking him; it's about one general manager liking him. And so that's kind of where I see with Milroe, his physical tools when you see him throw the football. The thing I like most about Jalen Milroe, if you ask me, is that when he went from the Senior Bowl to his pro day, what he improved on. Not within the pocket, his footwork, his ability to throw on the run. Now, all those physical tools that you talk about, I was absolutely dead wrong on a lot of quarterbacks. But those quarterbacks who aren't true drop back quarterbacks, they're really tough to evaluate. Now, Milroe has such physical skills, and you think about Lamar Jackson. I did not think Lamar Jackson would be the quarterback he was coming out. If I sat here and said I knew Lamar was going to be that good, I would lie to you. And there was 30, and the Ravens passed on him one time too. So it's like one of those. It's just really, really tough. But his physical tools are very intriguing. Now, Tommy Reese is the offensive coordinator, but Kevin Stefanski is the play caller.
Right.
So that tells me that Kevin Stefanski is going to would kind of lean towards more of a guy who stays within structure, just because of the Milroe's ability to move his feet. And that has, once again, I don't think anything's wrong with it. I understand, and before I say anything else, you win with players. You don't win with coaches. You don't win with plays. It's players over plays. So Milroe is just a super talent, and yes, you would think Stefanski can make that work. It hasn't. It didn't work with Watson. It was good with Flacco. It was good with Baker when he was good. It's just one of those things. It seems the structure guy seems to fit him better.
Right. It was good with a lot of quarterbacks, and Jacob, Mike, anybody feel free to, to jump in with questions at any point. But we've seen Stefanski do well, as you said, with other quarterbacks, Kirk Cousins, Case Keenum, with Nick Mullins. Heck, I think we've talked about this, in one form or another. He got wins out of PJ Walker. He even got a win out of DTR.
Yeah.
And so it does seem like he gets a lot out of those guys. I think a lot of what was messed up with Deshaun Watson was from about the neck up.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. And then building on that, Deshaun Watson has been the only improviser quarterback that Kevin has worked with. Yep. So what if it was just Deshaun and he can actually work with one of those guys who is better, as you said, from the shoulder up, and also just all of that. And it could just be Deshaun that just was not working well.
It just feels like watching Milroe under DeBoer. It was not a Milroe thing. He just never fit in that offense, and it never looked like he was comfortable in that scheme, and it never looked like anybody was willing to change their play calling or to change their offense to fit him a little bit better. And I'm not saying he's going to be the next starter, and I'm not saying he's going to be the franchise quarterback. I feel like he would be a little bit of a better – I feel like there's an upside of a gamble on him, because I don't think that he had great coaching for him at Alabama. And I just feel like he would translate a little better under a Stefanski's offense, because Stefanski gets the most out of his quarterbacks, I think.
Well, the thing that would be tough for me, if I was to argue that point a little bit, Heather, is that Milroe, to be successful, Milroe is going to have to use his feet. Right, he's going to have to use some zone read, some power read, some quarterback runs that Kevin has done very well within the red zone. But that's part of what Milroe does very well. That's something that Kevin, when he had to do that with Watson, especially over this last, they really struggled. Right, they really struggled in terms of trying to. There's calling plays and there's calling an offense, and I've always felt that Kevin is an outstanding play designer, and the ability to go to practice every day and see that like design and that plays build on each other. And with Watson, they were more grabbing plays, right? Mm-hmm. And I've been there before where nothing works and you're grabbing, you're trying different things. And I appreciate that out of Stefanski. The thing that would be hard for me with Milroe would be, how would Kevin, he already struggled with that. Now he's brought in a guy that, Tommy Reese is more of a pro style underneath center. He's a Notre Dame guy. So they played with multiple 12 and 13 personnel sets. They're going to be underneath center a little bit more, I think, things like that. So not saying that Milroe can't do it. It's just like Will Howard throwing the ball 15 to 25 yards. We just haven't seen that a lot in terms of, but regardless, you run a 4-3, you're one of your strengths can be running the football. And outside the red zone, that has not been a good mix for Kevin Stefanski.
Right. Now, something of interest and note, and again, you talked maybe to Jacob's point, maybe it wasn't so much Stefanski struggling with it as so much as the person who is working with. Because if you look at what and ask, I want to know if this is a kind of an apples to apples type discussion. Look at what Baltimore did when they went from Joe Flacco to Lamar Jackson. You went from a drop back pocket passer. And we know that we've got that here to Lamar Jackson. I mean, so I just wonder, is it one of the, and it took time for John Harbaugh and the offensive coordinator to adapt to that and try and work to his strengths. So I guess I'm just wondering if they look at that and they have the most upside, do we have, I guess, faith that they can do this?
Well, Todd Monken is one of my favorite offense coordinators in the NFL, and Todd Monken has done a great job. Lamar Jackson has become a top 10 pocket passer in the NFL. His ability to process information coming out of Louisville was at a much higher level than people gave him credit for.
Okay.
Because he's such an incredible athlete. So when Todd Monken came in, now if you look at the early part of his career, they structured that offense for him. Same thing that Kevin Stefanski tried to do with Watson. They tried to do some things. A lot of it falls on Watson. A lot of it falls on Stefanski. A lot of it falls on timing and the ability. Now you built that, especially those interior linemen. They're blocking certain schemes, and now they're blocking different schemes. There's a lot of things that tie into it more than just Watson playing bad, and that happened too. But there's other things that happen. So I just think that with Stefanski's scheme and what he wants to do now. You would love Kevin Stefanski. You would love every coach. We'd all like to be able to say, hey, I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to adapt everything I do for this guy. Just like with players, there's only a few coaches that have ever had success doing that. A coach has his schemes, has his foundation, then will tweak it for his players, right? To get the most out of his players. But with Watson, Kevin had to change. He didn't tweak it. Now they're running more RPOs. Now they're running more. They're an 11 personnel. Kevin is a non-11 personnel. He always has been a non-11 personnel kind of guy. So I just think it was too far gone. And once again, it's not what you know. Those guys are really, really smart. It's what you can fix. And Kevin, as an offense coordinator, you fix what you know. You fix what you install. You fix, things that you're comfortable with. And I just think it got away from that. But I appreciate that because they tried to maximize Deshaun Watson. And going back, I don't care what anybody says. You go back to that 20. I broke down every throw from 2020. When they went outside Watson, I thought it was a great signing because he was. And once again, I stick to strictly film. But when you watch it on film, he's outstanding in everything he does. But it never really fit what Kevin did. What Kevin does.
Okay. So now, if the Browns, you like Shuck, and I really didn't follow him much, and he kind of just appeared out of nowhere as the college football season ended. And first of all, my only comparable and nightmare is Brandon Weeden. I think
that's mine too. That was immediately where I went. Even
yeah, old quarterback is going to get caught under the flag. No, and he's had, he went to a number of schools. He's a little bit older now, and he also, if I'm recalling correctly, getting my brain out of here, and Jacob or anybody can correct me. Didn't he also have some injuries as well, which is part of why his collegiate career was prolonged a bit?
Well, it's funny. Everybody, the number one complaint everybody has with me, rightfully so, is his age. That's an issue. Now, I will say this compared to Brandon Weeden. When Brandon Weeden came out of Oklahoma State, college offenses were a lot different than NFL offenses. That's not really the case anymore. You're getting a lot of the same schematics, right? Underneath center, in the gun, high lows, smash concepts, crossing routes, a lot of motion, a lot of movement. A lot of that things is translated to the NFL. The other thing that I think that I'm biased on is that I'm a big Bill Parcells fan, and Bill Parcells always felt there had to be a number of starts in college. So these guys who are a little bit older, who have a ton of starts, does not bother me at all because of the fact they've seen so much. So Tyler Shuck is 26 years old. He comes in. He has a good 6 to 8 year career. I think certain teams would be okay with that. Maybe he's just a backup. I don't know who knows what his potential is. But in terms of watching the film, he's my number 3, and number 4 is a little bit farther, right? I have him way up there, closer to the first 2 than I do back, just because of his ability to spin it from the pocket, his ability to move his feet. A guy like Brady Cook has moved up on my board. Same kind of thing from Missouri. The big, strong kid, a little bit older, played in the system. Drinkowitz, where they threw the ball, they ran it underneath center in the gun. They did a lot of things. So, the Brandon Whedon comparisons, I thought the same thing, which is funny because it shows my age. But I don't think it's the same just because the offenses are so similar now. I won't say similar, but the footwork and how they're coached are a lot more similar than they were when Whedon came out.
Now, let's say the Browns, like you said, decide not to go quarterback hunting this year. Mm-hmm. What danger is there in waiting till next year? And not so much as what position they may end up in the draft, but in trying to evaluate quarterbacks now for next year, how accurate can you actually be?
Well, I think that goes to, for Kevin, I think it could be a little bit more than other coaches. There's other coaches, like if you think about the Miami offense with Tua, right? You can say what you want, but I think Dylan Gabriel is a great fit for that offense. Maybe he's not a great fit for other offenses just because of his height and things like that. But
that's what my concern is with Gabriel, is he's just not big, and
that's hard, right? So, but if you're talking a scheme that maybe gives him a chance, that would be the kind of scheme that gives him a chance. Now, in terms of a quarterback, right? There's a person that we're all talking about today that will fall flat on his face, and there's a person that all of us think is not going to be very good. And I'm going to use Bo Nix for last year, for example. Mm-hmm. I was not very high on Bo Nix last year. I thought he was just okay at Auburn. I thought he was okay at Oregon, surrounded by great people. And then he gets in the right scheme. He's really, really good. So it kind of depends on what quarterback, what coach thinks they can do with that particular guy. But the quarterback position, there's no other position like it in sports, right? There's so many. We have no idea. In fact, I have been so wrong on so many quarterbacks just because we don't know the it factor. We don't know, like I said, the ability to take care of your body. How do you do when you get money? Now you got to move. Are you? It sounds kind of funny, but are you a mama's boy and you lived close to your mom and dad your whole life, and now you got to move away? Well, that's hard. You have to cook your own food. That stuff all ties into it, and that's why the quarterback position is so hard. Then you got to get everybody on board. Then you got to be a leader, and there's so many things that tie into it. That's why I like some of these older guys, because they come in and some of these older guys can kind of do that a little bit. But you just said it best, Heather. I think like Dylan Gabriel, he's small.
He's small for me. But then you have players like a Jaden Daniels, where honestly, there are a handful of people who can say that they were high up on him, but there are the majority of people who they didn't have it. No one had that on their bingo card. So you're right. Yeah, you never know.
Yeah. Well, every round, you just have no idea. Your quarterback position, there's no position like in any other sport. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so let's do this. So we're going to just pause for a moment so that we can get a word from our sponsors. You are tuned into Going nuCLEar, full-blown coverage of the land here on the Fanatical Elves Network, a part of Fans First Sports Network. And welcome back, everybody, to Going nuCLEar, full-blown coverage of the land here on the Fanatical Elves Network, part of Fans First Sports Network. Ethan Greenberg here with Mike Rasinski, our guest Lance Riesland. Also joining us is Heather, my co-host from the Best Doggone Podcast in the land. You can find us here also on the Fanatical Elves Network, and my son Jacob, the youngster there. He's a bit of a mama's boy, but we do train him well, Lance. He has to cook his own meals most of the time because Dad's useless pretty much. So I just thought I'd give him some.
Hey, no problem there. I'm a mama's boy too, so that's no problem. That's no problem with me.
Okay, all right. We've talked a lot about quarterback. Now you've talked about. In terms of defensive linemen. So the Browns lock up Myles Garrett. They've signed some other players recently. Mason Graham certainly has been mentioned as, someone who's going to go very high in the draft. Outside of a Mason Graham, Are there any particular players that you have been watching film that you would think would be a particularly good fit for the Browns? Maybe not in the first round, but in a second, third, fourth, later round. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I will say this. First of all, Mason Graham's my number one guy on my board, ahead of Hunter, ahead of
Yep.
everybody. He's my number one guy just because he's a 3-down defensive tackle. Now, there's some really good positions that in this draft. Defensive line is one of them. So if you're talking interior guys, the loss of Dalvin Tomlinson's a lot more substantial than people think, just because Dalvin's boring, right? Dalvin's the guy who takes on double teams. Standing next to Dalvin, I remember coming home, and I was so shocked telling my wife, Dalvin was a brick, right? He was a 6'. He was equally as wide as he was tall, and he could move his feet. So he takes a lot of those. Now those double teams can't get up to JOK and can't get up to Hicks, which is very, very important in this defense. Now, guys that I really like, there's two guys in particular, and then one guy that I think fits the scheme, right? And he's going to be maybe an undrafted guy or a late round guy. So the first guy is Kenneth Grant, the other guy at Michigan. You're talking about a guy who's a monster, moves his feet very well. He's a two-gap guy, so he's another 3-down guy that can play. He can anchor in there on first and second down, take on those double teams, and then he can rush the passer. Now, he doesn't have an elite pass rush plan yet, but those big guys usually don't because they've always won with size. The other guy I like is from Ohio State, Tyreek Williams. Tyreek Williams, I did not realize was 6'3", 345 pounds. His upside is as for me is as good as Mason Graham. Now, he's not there right now. He's not as good as Mason Graham, in my opinion, yet. But his upside, he came to Ohio State at 360 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
But his motor and his movement skills, his lateral movement, his shorter burst, his hands, his violent hands, they are outstanding. And then a guy that I really like who fits the scheme, undersized, he's small. I always like to find these guys. A guy named Aeneas Peoples out of Virginia Tech. He's a guy that has no measurements. Doesn't run real well. I always tell people, put it on the film. He's a guy that's absolutely disruptive. So if you're thinking about a guy who's a late round guy who fits the scheme and can be a pass rush disruptor on third down, a guy like Aeneas Peoples fits the bill because he's not a guy that can take on doubles. He's not a guy that he has some limitations, but he doesn't have limitations on his motor, right? And that's kind of what I always look for when I watch film is, especially those late round guys. What guys fit the bill for a scheme? And there's Aeneas Peoples out of Virginia Tech does that. But Grant, besides Graham, Grant and Tyreek Williams are guys that are going to be really good NFL players.
Okay. And I mean, I know that, a lot of people talk about the edge rusher. They're talking, obviously, Abdul Carter is the first one that comes to mind. Are there now of the fellows that you mentioned? Are they interior linemen or?
Yeah.
Okay. And now, what about any other outside of that? Again, Abdul Carter. Who do you like as an edge rusher?
Well, I will say this: Abdul Carter, for me, I'm not as high on Abdul Carter potentially, not for what he does right now. And here's why: after I see Abdul Carter work out, he's 251 pounds. He's an athletic guy.
Hey, Lance, I'm sorry, we're just having a little trouble hearing you right this second.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Try that again. You broke up a little bit. Something.
You got me?
Yeah, gotcha. Thank you, sir. Sorry about that. Thank you.
No worries. So if you look at Abdul Carter, his structure, his body structure worries me more than anything else. When I saw him work out, he is a muscle hamster, right? There's not an ounce of fat on that guy. When you're like that, you don't have a lot of room for weight gain, right? So that worries me a little bit about him, especially if they're just going to try to put him at defensive end. NFL teams are going to run right at him. His talent is through the roof, though. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. The guy that I think is Abdul Carter, I would say Abdul Carter Light would be Mike Green out of Marshall. Guy who had 17 sacks last year, 6'3", 240 pounds. He had a great game against Ohio State. But when you put on the film of that guy, he anchors in there on the run, plays with great leverage. He's got violent hands. He plays the run. Another great scheme fit. A guy will probably be around day 2, possibly into day 3, but I would say a day 2 guy in case things change. But a guy like Mike Green is so good off the edge. And then you got other guys as well. But if you're talking about a guy in that Abdul Carter range, Mike Green's the guy that I really like on film.
Okay. All right. Very good. So if the Browns go Hunter at 2, they said that their plan would be to play him at wide receiver. So you're talking about potentially a wide receiver room with Jerry Jeudy, Travis Hunter, Cedric Tillman, and then you go to the tight ends. But in the receiver room, I don't think much. David Bell is really, he hasn't done much. And Michael Woods, too many injuries have really hampered him, kind of made him ineffective. And who knows what's going to happen with Elijah Moore. But are there any other top wide receivers that might be outside of the first round? Because we know Tedero McMillan is up there. He might be outside of Hunter, maybe the top wide receiver. Any other guys? Obviously, Emeka Egbuka.
Yeah.
I don't know where he's going to get snatched up, probably by Pittsburgh, because they love Ohio State guys, and they always
They
screw
do.
up.
They do. New Orleans and Pittsburgh love the Buckeyes.
Well, I will tell you this: the guy that I think the Browns need a touch guy, right? So for me, I think Jerry Jeudy's an outside guy. So when I talk about a number one guy, I think about a guy who's on the outside. He's running posts, he's running digs, he's running hitches, he's running outs. The Browns need a touch guy. Obviously, Hunter falls in that category, but they need a guy in the slot. Two different versions, right? You can either get a slot like Luther Burden. Luther Burden out of Missouri is a guy who can do a bunch of different things. He's 200 pounds. He kind of gives you what Elijah Moore gives you. I think Elijah Moore has been misused, in my opinion. Elijah Moore is a really good receiver. Going back to what you said about David Bell, seeing David Bell every day at practice tells me why foot speed is so important in the NFL. David Bell does everything right. He just doesn't run real well. But he is a really great guy to watch practice. And I appreciate it as a coach because he's trying to maximize what he can do. I think Elijah Moore is a really good outside receiver, even though he's small, but that he has outside receiver type skills. So Luther Burden is a guy that you would have to get at 33 or maybe trade back into the first round to get a little bit. Super talented out of Missouri. Like you said, Emeka Egbuka, when you're the all-time leading receiver at Ohio State, tells you you're pretty good. He's a guy that can play outside, but I still think they need a touch guy. And then a guy that you get on day 3 would be Xavier Restrepo out of Miami. Get 200 receptions. Now, another guy, he ran a 4.8. I don't care about the 40. And why? Because of what his skill set is. He's going to be in the slot, specifically in the slot only. He's going to work against linebackers. He's going to work against safeties. Again, you watch him in the Senior Bowl. Some guys just have that ability to get open. Some guys understand leverage. Some guys understand how to hit blind spots, and they're going against man coverage. You can move him off the ball because he's a slot, so that'll get him off press coverage. So a guy who's highly productive on day 3 would be Xavier Restrepo. If you're talking about a touch guy, obviously Egbuka is really good. But my number one touch guy, a guy in space that you don't have to do a lot for, would be Luther Burden out of Missouri.
Okay. All right. These are all going to be very intriguing things to watch as we go down the board. And anybody else here still have that fear that you're like, oh crap, the Browns didn't draft him? Wait, here come the Steelers. They're drafting him. Is that just me? Do I have PTSD or something like that? That the Steelers are obviously going to take the player that we should have drafted.
It's like when you're playing fantasy football. You're up next, and that person right before you snipes it.
Exactly. The running back room is very interesting.
Rich this year.
It is. Now you've got questions on what's on the current roster. There's the emotional side of you bring Nick Chubb back, and I don't know where things stand with that. I don't think that maybe he's not his best self, but he's still got something there. Quite frankly, I don't know about you, Lance, anybody. I feel like even at him at like 85%,
yeah,
I like him more than Jerome Ford.
Well,
I agree, definitely.
Well, Jerome Ford is a guy, so I think Jerome Ford, I thought he did a much better job last year of not being boom or bust, right? So when I was a coordinator, I always told my running backs, don't be a boom or bust. And what I mean by that is don't be a guy who gets me 60 or gets me 0.
Right.
And that's what Jerome Ford does. He did a lot of 2 years ago. I thought he was much better last year, but I think he's a third down guy, and he's proven he's tough. He'll stick his nose in there on pass protection. So I think if he was more in the third down role, he'll be really, really successful. Now, Chubb, I'm with you on that one. I'm always trying to stick to how it works. And first of all, NFL running backs at the age of 30 really always regress anyway, no matter how talented they are.
Right.
But there's one guy I will not bet against to be Nick Chubb, right?
Right.
I will tell you this: getting down to you have no idea that Nick Chubb is the star that he is. He talks to you every time I'm down there. He's such a nice guy, right?
Mhm.
And it's hard. It sounds kind of weird, but he's such a nice guy, and he practices like he's fighting for his job, which I think is a really special thing out of that guy. Now, going to the draft, right? So Genty's a guy out of Boise State. Love him. 700. He had 800. He's had 800 touches at Boise State. That worries me about tread on his tires coming, getting into the NFL, because when you run violently, that's hard on your body. We just saw it with Nick Chubb, right? He's a violent runner, right? Same with Amaro. I love Travion Henderson. However, Travion Henderson is a home run hitter. I was not a home run hitter. That's an offensive.
I'm sorry, Lance.
We're losing you again, Lance.
Listen me?
Okay, there you go. I think
There
you
you
just
go.
moved and the cord moved or something.
All
Okay,
right.
so Travion Henderson is a home
So
run.
Travion Henderson's a home run guy.
So
Yeah.
Travion Henderson is a home run hitter, right? But I think with the Browns, if you look at a guy like, first of all, Heather, you said it best. It's a very rich draft.
Mhm.
But for me, the Browns need, if you want to help your quarterback out, if you want to help your defense out, you got to win on first down. You got to get to 2nd and 6. Now that's boring, right? First down, 4-down run. But at 2nd and 6, now the quarterback and now the offensive coordinator are in control. And a guy like Damian Martinez, who's really, really starting to grow on me from Miami of Florida. He's a guy. He's 217 pounds. He's always leaning forward. He's not a guy who is going to probably hit the home run, but he is a guy who's going to get you to 2nd 6. And for me, now once again, I love Travion Henderson. I love Junkins. There's a lot of backs I really like, and a lot of backs I would go, yeah, I'm good with that, right? But thinking about a guy on day 3 that you can get value out of, a guy like Damian Martinez is the guy I love, because he's not a guy. He'll be boring, but there'll be a lot of 2nd 6 at Damian Martinez as your running back.
What about?
So are you looking at? Sorry, Nathan. I was going to say, are you looking at the college teams then that have that 2-headed attack because of the tread on the tires you don't want a Genty because he is an every down back guy, but where you have just Henderson and Judkins, they were pretty 50-50. They were pretty equal, so they're fresh. Are you looking at who they played with in their college?
I think it's more their style. Like Genty as a coach, I mean,
they're two totally different. Judkins and Henderson are two completely different backs.
And when you look at Junkins is more like Jenkins, right? Where he's just a violent.
He's a basher. He's a basher.
A guy who fits the scheme. If they were going to go running back a little bit earlier, is Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. That weak side zone, gap scheme, 1 foot in the ground.
Yep.
Just over 200 carries last year at Iowa, 1,500 yards, 21 touchdowns. So you're talking about a guy who understands zone scheme, comes out of Iowa, which means he's coming out, can run downhill. That's what a lot of running backs they've never done before, is they coming out of an I formation or coming out from underneath center because everybody's in the shotgun. So I think Caleb Johnson's a great fit. I look more at Heather, I look more at the style of running, not because, like, for example, I think Genty is the best back to come out. But I just, when you run, if you watch like the Penn State game, I mean, he took an absolute beating.
Yes, he did, and he's going to every game in the end because that's just who he is. That's just who he is. You're not going to stop that. You're not going to change that.
And I tell everybody this story. My first time down at Browns practice, I watched the Eagles and the Browns offensive line from like 4 years ago when they were just outstanding. And watching them go at it, it's violence, right? It's 300-pound men who are just fast and violent, and it's just hard to survive if you're running back with that style. Nick Chubb's a great example. There's no one more physically fit than Nick Chubb, and he's struggled because it's that style.
Right.
What do you think about a running back like Cam Scattaboo?
Well, once again, he fits into this really deep class of guys who have multiple skills, catch the ball in the backfield. He's good on 3rd down. He's good in pass protection. Comes on an offense out of Arizona State. They did a lot of different things. They asked him to do, a lot of these backs. A lot of these backs struggle with pass protection because in college maybe they have 2 to 3 pass protections, where in the NFL they're going to have a lot more than that. So they did a really nice job at Arizona State with the pass protection. Big kid, runs violent. Again, be a guy that I love on 1st and 2nd down. That violent style worries you a little bit. But if you're getting the guy in the 4th, 5th round, then you don't really care about the tread, right? And it's how much can you get out of those guys. It's such a deep draft. I just think the Browns have so many holes to fill at tight end, interior offensive line, and tackle. I just think there's some other spots that they can get really good value in later rounds with the running backs.
Okay. You talked about tight end. Where do you think a guy like Harold Fannin will go in the draft? I know it's a hometown take, but love that guy. Where do you think he'll go, like round wise?
Well, Harry Fan was very interesting. Some of his best games, I thought his best game was against Texas A&M. So he's done it against really good people. Now he's a unicorn, right? Because he's 235 pounds. He's a little bit different. Now, what I like about him is that I think if he was to be drafted by the Browns, he's got to be able to do a little bit what Harrison Bryant did back when he was with the Browns. So Harrison Bryant, everybody was really down on Harrison Bryant, but what he allowed you to do is get in different formations because of his flexibility. Harold Fan is a guy who can really create matchup problems for safeties and linebackers. So if he can, he had 117 receptions, led the country in receiving last year. So he's a guy who has, I think the Browns need an influx of talent. I think if Harold Fan is around, round 3 or 4, he's a guy you jump on because of that ability to run after catch and create matchup problems. Now, he's not a guy you're going to put on the end of the line and tell him to block the 5 technique, but he can block down. He can, they pin and pull, they can flex him out. They can do some different things with him. You got to use him properly on offense, but he's a talented guy, especially when he gets the ball in his hands.
Got it. Okay. And guys, Mike, Jacob, please feel free if you've got a question here to jump in. I don't want to control the whole narrative here. I apologize.
No. I just want to go back to the Chubb the Chubb conversation real quick. I just want to touch on something. He's more than just a player. He's a locker room asset. And if you look, when you think of playing like a Raven, who do you think of?
Ray Lewis.
Ray Lewis, exactly. So when you go to the Browns, who do you think of play like a Brown?
Charlie?
I think Nick Chubb's a pretty good example there. I think
exactly. And that's the point. You don't have anyone on offense, especially, who can really be a vocal leader in that locker room, who knows what it means to play like a Brown. And if you bring back Chubb, he can do that.
So you're saying from more of a leadership perspective.
Exactly. And he still can, and I believe he still has something left in the tank.
Okay.
So I really think that the Browns should, and I really hope they do, bring back Nick Chubb.
Are you guys hearing me a little better now? I changed mics here. All right. So so here's my thing about Nick Chubb. One thing I've learned about the NFL is that it is it's a very harsh business. And if they don't, unfortunately, if they don't think Nick Chubb can help them on the field, I'm not sure if they keep him. And that's what's really bad about the NFL. Because I think you're right. I think the leadership, the things like that, they matter with chemistry and things like that. But the thing that's really interesting, it's only a 53-man roster. So you have to be productive. I still think I'm with you though. More than his leadership, I still think there's some carries left in Nick Chubb. I really do. Now I might be naive, and I might, but his work ethic is second to none. So I think he. If anybody's going to be successful after we've been through, it'd be Nick Chubb. I'll just put it at that.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have a good news story too.
Stadium
drama, drama.
Absolutely,
bring him back.
Right now, one other, and speaking of leaders, just your opinion on this. We went through the Myles Garrett drama, and then Jimmy Haslam comes out and says basically, and I'm paraphrasing, that they want him to be more of a leader. They put in incentives in his contract for workouts and practices, things of that nature. Do you think, or do you believe, from what you've seen, that he needs to be more of a leader off the field, more so than on the field, where his play kind of dictates and demonstrates and that all-out effort? Do you sense that he does need to do a little bit more?
Well, the thing is there's different types of leader, right? And the only thing I will say is that when you ask a guy to be a leader that's not his style, it comes across as phony sometimes, especially with other guys on your team. So for Myles Garrett, he's the best player on the team. His leadership ability, for me, is when he's out there, he's dominant, right? So no matter what practices he practices really hard. But to say that he's going to be more of a vocal leader, I don't see that. And I might. People don't like me saying that, but I just know, being involved in football for 40 years,
his leadership qualities, he's the best player on the field. You need another guy to be the vocal guy. You need a guy to be the guy in the locker room. So for me, I don't see Myles Garrett maybe showing up, just being around, like you're saying, if they're giving him incentives to be at workouts, be at involuntary, all the mini camps and things like that, that'll be important. His presence is kind of his leadership, right? He's the number one defensive guy in the NFL. But to say he's going to be more vocal and he's going to be the guy that on day 7 is going to be screaming and yelling, that's not Myles Garrett's style. And, watching him for 3 years and I get such a great opportunity to be down there right in the mix with those guys. That's not his style. His style is to be out there and make no question about it. No matter who I've seen with the joint practices and stuff, Myles Garrett's the best player on the field. And it's not really close usually. So that's going to be, for me, that's going to be his leadership, is just making sure you're on time for everything. Lead by example in terms of being a professional, right? So being on time for meetings, being on time for workouts, making sure you're keeping all your teammates accountable. But the rah-rah stuff that people want, that's not his style. And it'll come across and it won't be authentic for him to do that, right? So I just think he's got to be him and go be the best player in the NFL.
But I mean, honestly, it's like staffing at a job. You don't want 50 people on your team who all 50 of them want to be leaders. Mm-hmm. You need, 45 of them to be the worker bees and to be the ones that are doing the little things and showing up and correcting you when you're on the field and saying, you need to be here, you need to be doing this quietly. And then you need maybe 5 of your team to be those vocal leaders, to be the ones that are the rah-rah, rally the troops, because you can't have every single person on the team wanting to be a leader, or else you're going to have chaos and egos. And it's not a good look. So I think people put too much emphasis on that.
Right. Before we go to Jacob's mock draft, I just wanted to give room here. Mike, do you have any other questions you wanted to ask Lance, Heather, or Jacob? Anybody quick, a question before we go to the mock draft?
Yeah, one last question, and this may be addressed as you analyze the mock draft, Lance. But it sounds to me, that you're pretty high on quarterback as what the Browns should do, number one. So if they do that, if they take Shedeur, with the second pick, what do they do with that first pick in the second round? What position do they address?
Well, I think for me, it's got to be an influx of talent, right? So I've kind of stuck with that theme, right? So for me, it would be Luther Burden. I think they're going to go Hunter. I wouldn't be upset if they went Shedeur Sanders, but I think with Flacco signing, they're going to go Hunter, which is an influx of talent. Again, an influx of talent. Billy Bowman, a safety. Malachi Starks, a safety. Jeffrey Bassa, a linebacker out of Oregon. Guys who are hybrid guys who are super high athletic guys. It's just got to be an influx of talent at a bunch of positions, especially with depth. So if the Browns, regardless if the Browns go with Sanders or Hunter, I would still go Burden, because Hunter's a guy who's going to probably play both ways and do some things. And on offense, he'll be a touch guy, right? So if they're going to focus him on offense, the other side of the ball is going to be very simple in terms of what he has to know. They'll just use his athleticism. So I would still go Burden at 33. In my mock draft, I took Shedeur at second. That was before Flacco signing. And then I took Burden at 33. And then I had Fannin going 67. So I just think they got to get an influx of talent on the offense side of the ball in the secondary, guys who run around, get some turnovers, Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame is a guy who's 17 interceptions, things like that. So get guys, just talent, right? Guys who can wow you with their physical skills along with their production.
So my last question is, do you think we should go safety a little bit earlier, because it is a little bit of a weaker class for safeties? Do you think we should go safety a little bit earlier?
I think a guy I've been really high on is Billy Bowman out of Oklahoma. He's a guy you're going to get in the 5th or 6th round. It's a little bit different for the Browns because of the safety. Now, I think with Grant Delpit, if they can leave Grant Delpit down in the box, right? So Grant Delpit plays best when he's within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. Now, he does, with motion and shifts, but really what they need is they need a guy, a one high hat safety that can get sideline to sideline, be the last line of defense, tackle, and then make interceptions, right? Get over the top and create some turnovers. Whether you're tackling violently or you're tipping the ball, you're getting interception. They have to. Juan Thornhill, all the things with him not hustling, that wasn't my issue. My issue was that he just didn't have any turnovers, and that deep safety. So with the Brown, once again, going back to scheme, like you said, Heather, it's not a deep class if you're looking for true, two shell safeties. But
Well-
one high safeties, those are guys who just have to be athletic. A guy like Billy Bowman, undersized, 5'10", runs really well, 11 interceptions, violent when he tackles. He's a guy that you would like back there. He would also be that guy who's your vocal leader. He's a no-nonsense guy with Brent Venables, and I love watching his film. So I think because of the scheme they're in, you can get, Billy Bowman, you can get in the 5th or 6th round.
So you're looking for a free safety.
You got it.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So if nobody has any further questions, we're going to go to Jacob's mock draft, and we won't mock him, and except for when we do, and that's the part of it. So okay. So let's go to Jacob's mock draft here. All right. Let's see, Jacob, in your first round at the second. So you have Cam Ward going to Tennessee. With your second pick, you have the Browns going with
Travis Hunter, wide receiver / corner out of Colorado.
All right. I think we're all pretty good with that. We like that. Jacob, you've gone back and forth there. Was there any particular reason that you decided to go with Hunter? Was that just conventional wisdom, or did you think, look, we can maximize talent and then get a quarterback maybe with 33 or come back in the first round?
That's a great question. There is definitely a big reason why I chose Hunter here. Well, to start off, he's just an incredible two-way player. Just not many prospects like him has been seen throughout the history of college football, NFL, just any level of football. But the main reason why I took him is just the way that Andrew Berry has talked about him. He has gone on to compare him to Shohei Ohtani, who
That's
can
pretty
hit
high
well.
praise. And pitch.
What?
That's a pretty
Yeah.
high praise. That's
Yeah, that is very, very high praise. And a good point made by Quincy Carrier, shout him out, that he could play wide receiver one game, play most of the snaps there, right? But then let's say Denzel Ward gets injured. He's usually good for about, unfortunately, 2 to 3 games out a season where he's going to be injured. So then now you have a little hole, and let's say you're coming up against the Bengals, who you need your best game from your secondary. Then you can flip Hunter and have him play most of snaps as a corner to fill in for the injured Ward. And that would be the dream. If you could have that, where he can play one position, one game, another game to fit your needs for that game, that would just be just something that would just take this team to the next level.
okay. That's it. That would be an interesting scenario. I'd be a little concerned in terms of the amount of time that he'd have to spend. Like which side of the film room are you in? Is question. Lance, did you have any thoughts about Travis Hunter's statements talking about, his playing on both sides of the ball?
Well, my biggest concern with Travis Hunter playing defensive back is that when you watch the film, you watch every snap, he's violent. And at 185 pounds, his best attribute as a tough football player, he's not a prima donna, is the fact that at 185 pounds, that usually doesn't work. Now, they said the Browns, depending on what side he, plays on. So let's say he's a receiver, then he's just going to be simply a man coverage guy on defense. Let's say he focuses on defense. Then offensively, he'll just be a touch guy. So whatever they want to do with him, obviously, he's a tremendous talent. I worry about his health on defense just because of the fact he's not afraid of contact. And we've seen with Denzel Ward,
right,
that is not always great when you're 185 pounds because of the size of these guys. So that would be my concern with him playing defense full time, is just the fact that he's not afraid to hit, and that's not always great in the NFL.
Right.
You can't have the best player, arguably the best player in the draft, not touching the ball as much as possible. I think he's a wide receiver.
Yeah, got to make an impact there. Okay. Well, let's go to the second round. Jacob's mock draft. In the second round, at the 33rd pick, still available. Jacob, tell them who you got.
I pick Jalen Milroe, quarterback out of Alabama.
All right, we've had a lot of discussion about this. Now, at this point in this mock draft, just so we can be clear, went too far. Cam Ward would be gone at 1. And then the other quarterbacks that would be gone as well, Shedeur Sanders, they have at 16 to Seattle. And this is where I really start questioning the computer here. But anyway, so it looks like at that point he would be the third quarterback off the board. You chose Milroe at that point over guys like Shuck and Dart, Gabriel, Will Howard. Just what was the key to Milroe over those other guys for you, Jacob?
Yeah, just like I said with Hunter, Andrew Berry, again, talking about him a lot, comparing his running ability to Lamar Jackson.
Okay. Well, you're playing the percentages. I mean, you know what? Hey, seems like a good gamble if you got inside info of sorts there. And then, oh, boy, Quinshon Judkins to the Raiders. Ouch. I don't want that. Come on. Come on now. We want to make them better. And Xavier Watts to Miami there. Okay, let's take a look at then, moving forward, the third round, 2 picks at 67.
I don't think he's still going to be there.
Hey, man, I'm just going by the computer, which picks some ridiculous things here. And, hey, Jacob can only do what's available. And if he's available, Jacob at number 67.
That would be the steal of the draft.
Who do you have the Browns taking?
Trevion Henderson, running back, OSU.
Lance, is there any way in hell that Trevion Henderson falls to the third round?
I'd say no. If you do, you run up there after the 66
You
pick.
trade to get him.
Yeah, it's once again though, you never know what people, you could say whatever. We've all watched the draft. There's some things crazy things that happen. So running backs, obviously this year has been a difference with Henry and those guys and Saquon, but if he's around at 67, you absolutely have to jump on him. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. And then at 94, Jacob, I think this is a good pick too.
Yeah.
Who do you got?
I got Shamar Turner, defensive tackle out of A&M, Texas A&M.
What are your thoughts about Shamar Turner on the film, Lance?
Nick Scorton, they had they should have been better than they were this year. Their defensive line is loaded, right? So they had a bunch of guys, and they had a bunch of juniors that are really good that are sophomores are going to be coming out next year. So to me, he's a better athlete than he is a football player right now. He's kind of a bull in a china shop right now. He's a guy that's disruptive, doesn't have much of a pass rush plan yet. But once again, when you talk about third round on, you talk about physical traits, especially with Barry. Barry likes those traits, right? Those guys who have long arms and especially the defensive line. He kind of gives you an Alex Wright vibe with his length, his ability to do things. So I think it's a great pick. He's long. He's a guy that people I work with, Cleveland.com, like him a lot. So he's a guy who has a really high upside. One thing I will say about him, his production does not match his athleticism yet. And that's the one concern I would have.
So there's upside. There's room for growth.
Oh, absolutely. He's a physical specimen now.
Okay. All right. Now let's go to round number 4. And in round 4, the second pick, number 104, Jacob, you got the who do you got here for the Browns?
I have Tez Johnson, wide receiver out of Oregon.
Now, didn't he spit in Ohio State, the Ohio State defensive back's face and get ejected from that game, or was that a different receiver?
No, he spit in Igbenogsen's face.
Oh, okay. Well, Igbenogsen was probably holding him a lot.
Hey.
All right, Jacob, you like now. You took him in that round over Lance's guy, Xavier Restrepo. Are you and Lance gonna have a fight?
No fights.
What made you like Tez Johnson over Xavier Restrepo at that point?
I think Tez Johnson can be explosive off the line, and he can track the ball in the air.
Okay. That's a good that you should be able to do that. That's a good trait to have as a wide receiver. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
No, I'm just busting your balls there a little bit, bud. No, that's a solid pick there. And if they've already got Hunt, so now this is a lot of firepower at this juncture. You'd be talking about Henderson, Hunter, Milroe, maybe not right away, but at quarterback. You're talking about Tez Johnson. That's a lot of offense there. I'm impressed with that. way to go, Pro Football Sports Network, or whatever it is that we're using here. Ridiculous. All right, what do we got in round number 5?
No picks. That's
No
what we
pick.
have.
Hey, there you. Hey, look, Quinn Ewers goes to the Titans. Maybe he can surpass Captain Mayonnaise. What happened to Quinn Ewers? What happened to Quinn Ewers, Lance?
Well, it's so Quinn Ewers is a guy. First of all, he'll be okay in terms of as an NFL. Now, the thing that he struggles with, he gets on his back foot a lot, right? So when he's pressured, and when you get on your back foot, and you're not an elite arm talent guy, that's why when you look at some of his footballs, especially in the playoffs, if you guys remember, if you look at his footwork is wrong. And when your footwork is wrong, and you're not a guy who can rely on your arm talent, that's what really hurt him. His ability when he has to move his feet within the pocket. He gets in it. Rarely in the NFL are you always in it. Now, you're very rarely are you in a clean pocket. So that's what his big issue is right now, is his ability to throw off platform and to drive the football when he has to use just his arm.
Okay. Now, Jacob, you're going to get some pushback here from across the pond. Mike, our friend from the UK, says, surely you would take a tight end before a second wide receiver. I'll let you duke it out with Mike at a later point here. Going on to round 6.
Yeah, 4 picks.
Holy smokes. All right, let's roll with it. Tell us what you got, Jacob. Starting with 179.
We have Jack Nelson, offensive tackle out of Wisconsin.
Can he be the next Joe Thomas? I have no idea.
No.
Oh, okay. Do you have any intel on Jack Nelson, Lance?
Yeah, comes out of Wisconsin. Once again, kind of fits that Wisconsin, right? They're going to run. Now, it's a little bit different than it was 3 years ago.
Right.
But is a big Wisconsin guy who can move his feet. He'll be really good in the zone scheme. I'm not sure how physical he is at the point of attack, but he's got a lot of tools. He grinds it out. He's more of a zone blocker. Big physical guy. A lot of those linemen, once again, I always like to judge linemen 2 years from when they're drafted, unless they're in the top, unless they're a top, 30 pick. But once again, physical tools, comes out of a school that likes to run the football, or at least did. So, yeah, he's a pretty good player.
Okay. At 192, who you got, Jacob?
I got Jabbar Muhammad, corner out of Oregon.
Okay. Any thoughts on Jabbar Muhammad, Lance?
Long, he does a pretty good job in man coverage. Again, they have to improve his eyes in zone, right? So if you look at what he on film, these guys, these athletic guys, especially when they're they come into college and they're really, really athletic. If you look like Denzel Ward at Ohio State, they rely so much on their athleticism that man coverage is best for them. And when they're in zone, they have trouble with their eyes sometimes, so they can be manipulated with quarterback's eyes. But he's, once again, though, this late in the draft, a guy who's athletic, long, good man coverage, good scheme fit. It's worth a shot. It could be a good special teamer for sure.
Okay. Jacob at 200, who you got?
You got Carson Vincent, offensive tackle out of Alabama A&M.
Have you done a deep dive on Carson Vincent, Lance?
I have not done a deep dive. I have watched a little bit. I got my notes basically on a guy like Vincent would be very similar to most of my small school guys is they have traits, right? Because the only way you can, a lot of those guys dominate at the lower levels, but you have to have physical traits at the lower level. He's a mauler in the run game, long, big guy. So obviously we'll see how he does against competition in the NFL. But again, those guys, if you look at any Division III guys or guys who come from, any of the FCS or whatever, the smaller, the non-Power 5 schools, they better have physical traits, and that's what Vincent has. He has some physical traits that general managers like.
Okay, Jacob at 216, what you got?
I got Tim Smith, defensive tackle out of Alabama.
Hey, Mike, that was our law professor in JMC, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's aged well, I guess.
Yeah. No. All right, Tim Smith, defensive tackle, Alabama, SEC. Any notes there?
Well, I will say no, but I don't have any notes on Tim Smith. But I will tell you this: if coming out of Alabama, he's going to be big. He's going to have long arms. He's going to be good against the run. He's going to be a good two-gapper. He's going to be an SEC guy, which means he's going to have physical traits that are through the roof. A lot of those SEC guys aren't dominant college guys, but they're pretty good pros just because of their physicalness. So I would guarantee he's physical. Once again, I've seen him. I've watched him, and I remember him during the season, but I have not broken him down. But I'd be willing to bet if you look at my notes on my defensive tackles from the SEC, they're all pretty similar.
All right. And then, well, this is a picture of
Well,
Jacob.
that's very wrong.
I like it.
Oh, hey, well, we had to lift up. We had to do our lifting. We had to get our physical traits, and I'm sorry, skip too far there. All right, one more pick for the Browns at 255, and this one is going to be right up Mike's alley from the UK. Had you forgotten that we have one reliable tight end at this point? Who did you find at 255?
Found Jackson Hawes, tight end out of Georgia Tech.
All right. Do we have any scouting reports on Hawes?
I do not. He's not in my top 20. However, but I will say this about the tight end position. The tight end position, the running back position, there's a lot of really good, like, for example, one of my favorite tight ends is Luke Lachey, who might not even be drafted out of Iowa. So take
him all day.
I like him, though. I like him. You pick him up, he's going to make a roster somewhere.
So you talk about guy once again, though. So the tight ends from 20 to 30, and once again, my list is just as good as any of your list. Your list is just as good as mine, right? We all have our own thoughts, but the tight ends that the Browns need they need two different types of tight end. They need a flex guy that can put his hand on the ground, and then they need a guy who can put his hand on the ground. So Haas is a guy who's pretty well-rounded. They have Njoku, but that's all they have. So I think they're gonna have to go after a couple tight ends. So in my mock, I had two tight ends. But once again, they need some skill too. So this draft isn't too bad to me.
Where do you think G. Scott will fall?
I don't think G. Scott will be drafted. But I think he'll, once again, though, when you don't get drafted,
when
you don't get drafted, you can. The thing about not being drafted, you can go to where you fit. Then you can go where they need bodies. So the Browns need tight end bodies. They just went to 11 personnel, so they don't even have many tight end bodies in the building. So that's a good thing about not getting drafted late. Money's similar, so go where you can play. So I don't think he'll be drafted, but he's a guy I think will make a roster.
He will. He does all the little things. G. Scott does.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Jacob, thank you very much. We're going to wait and see how accurate you are on this draft. And if you get any of these picks right, you're going to get nothing from me, and you will like it. I'll give you the old attaboy, or I'll tell you that these players stunk and you were and this computer simulation is ridiculous. That's where we'll go with that. Okay, so Lance, I know this is kind of off the topic here, but I just wanted to talk about this. The Cavs. We can't ignore this. Up 1-0 on the Heat. How's everybody feeling after game one?
Ty Jerome. That's all I have to say.
He got screwed tonight. He did not win Sixth Man of the Year. He finished third. Lance, did you see that? What are your thoughts about the Cavs in this series?
Well, I tell you what, there's even for me, I think the physical pounding they took from the Knicks and the last couple of years in the playoffs. Right. I think everybody has kind of waited for this. They had a great regular season, which can't be forgotten. But now they need to show that they can do it. I think there's a lot of apprehension going into yesterday's game. It was, I think people are understanding that this is a really good basketball team, and these guys have grown up. My college friend, my college roommate, is an assistant coach with the Cavs, and I think they're just different. And talking, texting with him a little bit. They're ready to go, and it seems like they were ready to go yesterday. And once again, it's kind of nice that Mitchell doesn't have to carry the show every night, right? And they got a lot of good guys, and Mobley's really good, and Ty Jerome coming off the bench, and they're deep, and they got big guys when they got matchup things for the Celtics with the guys they picked up. So yeah, I'm a big Cavs fan. I'll be screaming and yelling tomorrow night for sure.
That's good. Mike, what did you think of the performance of DG, and how important was it for him to have a great breakout game like that, considering the criticisms, whether right or wrong, over the past couple of years in the playoffs?
Yeah, that was great to see. I think it'll be a huge confidence booster for him as well. Performances like that seem to carry over in playoff games and playoff series too. So we'll see if it does tomorrow, but I can see that giving him the boost. And what I really like about this team too is the guards they shined bright yesterday, and we didn't really rely on the two big men we have. But tomorrow that can completely change. If we had Hunter, Mobley, Okoro did not have good games, and we still won by 21.
Yes, he did.
he didn't shoot well.
Yeah,
And that's kind of important. But no, no.
But tomorrow could be Mobley and Allen that have the good
Or
games.
Okoro. No, I'm sorry.
Okoro. So I just like how versatile this team is, and they can win in different ways, and that's going to help them not only in this series, I think, but in the upcoming series as well.
Do you think Sam Merrill heard me trash talking him?
He must have. Yep, he must have.
Yes. And
yeah, I think that was a really good. I think that was a really good point, though. Everybody was making such a big deal out of Mobley not having a great game, but why did he need to? That's where you sit back and you let the players who are hot be hot, and then maybe you need to be hot the next game. Like, I don't think it was that big of a deal. And I will say, Ethan, I'm just gonna get it out there. I take the ball out of Isaac Okoro's hands. I love that guy more than anybody, but please do not ever let him shoot another shot from beyond the three. Don't let him shoot a layup at this point. You're there for defense, okay?
He has to shoot or he's not useful on the floor.
Please stop shooting the ball. Just hustle. Just get those hustle plays, because he did have a couple of hustle plays and hustle rebounds.
Absolutely.
And that's where you need him to shine. So, like, I love him, but every time he shoots the ball, I'm like, really? Because I know that I'm going to get like, tell him to stop shooting. Well, I wish I could. But I think that everybody made too big of a deal out of like Mobley and Allen not playing Mobley and Allen ball. Who cares? At this point, you just need to win, and they did.
Right. Now, I guess, guys, basically, does it fit the theme of the team all season that it's been a different person every night? That, like you said, it wasn't such a big deal that, a guy like Mobley didn't have a great game or Hunter didn't have his best game. Is that just more kind of just symbolic of the unselfishness of this team?
Yeah, because then you have a player, you have a Max Strus who's in the starting lineup who's not going to score you a ton of points, but you don't need him to score points. He can if you
That's the beauty.
So it's that next man up mentality to me in some ways. And I feel like it's the same team, but different coach, and there's more continuity. There's more security because they all have long-term contracts. They're all here. There's no question surrounding that. There's not that cloud like there has been in the last several years. And I think that that's helping.
Okay. Okay, so now we're gonna go a little coach talk here, Lance. I'm a known JB hater, and I will not apologize for that. No, after you watched him in Game 1 and almost again in Game 2 against the Knicks, were you just going, "Thank you, God, that we made the change"?
Well, it's funny. It seems like he's the kind of the guy that like can get the most out of a young team, and then you move on, right? So, so I was not an anti JB guy. I just felt like they were maybe needed a fresh light in terms of we've all been there, right? So if you're coaching at a place a while, sometimes just a fresh start gives you. And Atkinson, to Heather's point, it just seems like, first of all, when you're signed, it's a lot easier in terms of your mental state.
Right.
For me. Everything you guys are talking about, I just think they're tougher, and maybe that's the football guy in me, but I just feel like Mobley, these guys are.
Mobley is playing on a different level.
Yeah, they're just a lot physically tougher this year, right? They're not getting pushed around, and obviously Hunter's a big signing physically when they played the Celtics, but yeah, I just think they're tougher. They just look tougher. They look older. There's the physical maturity. Everybody's on Mobley. Mobley's a kid. It's hard to imagine. But
he's a gazelle. He's a baby gazelle.
He's just a big kid. So once again, I think Garland takes a lot of heat. So I think for him, it was great to see him play well. And I think their expectations are pretty high for those guys, and it should be. They had a great year.
You know what I noticed though, and I promise this isn't a flex. It's just going to come off like one, but I promise it's not. But the last couple of games of the year, we had very, very, very close seats to the bench, and in awe and mesmerized, but I was watching the players, and what it looked like is that they were having more fun this year than they have had in the past. They were dancing, they were talking to each other, they were laughing, they were making jokes. They were still playing serious because we went to the Sacramento game when they lost, and you could see they were mad, but they were still more carefree. They were loose, and you haven't seen that in past years, I don't think. So it looks like, again, it just looks like there's just a better chemistry with all of them.
Yeah. Mike, I mean, did you kind of notice, what are your thoughts on that?
On the chemistry?
Yeah.
I agree. And I think probably when you have the season they've had too, it becomes more fun for them.
Wow.
And the other thing I like is that they didn't really make any big changes. Is really the same personnel they brought back. So they're probably more comfortable with each other. You see that with any team. You can grow closer the more you get to know each other too, which I think all of those things combine to make them probably a closer team. And to Heather's point, probably a better team because of that too.
And I think the biggest win of today for the Cavs was Jacob getting some compliments on a shirt that I didn't know he had, a Cavs shirt that he wore to school. You could say, nice. You see, Jacob, you could say, it's in my blood. I'm not one of these bandwagon guys, right?
Yeah, this is how I was born.
Exactly. All right, so Cavs go game 2 tomorrow night. Big day. The Guardians looking for
beat New York.
They are looking for a sweep. Are you kidding me, guys? I mean, I'm shocked that they pulled it out again today, and we've got all these issues, yet somehow we're 14-9.
Which is the best record in the American League.
Right. And we're out hitting, like we're home runs, and we're powerballing this year. This is insane. It's crazy. And when they had that 4-run inning against the Yankees, they had retired 11 in a row. So we did a lot of it with 2 outs. This team just isn't quitting. For some reason, managers in Cleveland right now are keeping our teams together.
Well, one of the most overused, for me, one of the most overused words in sports, especially football, is the word culture. And people are like, what does that mean? Well, when you have a culture, culture is not what you say, it's what you do. And the Guardians expect to win, right? And that's just kind of what you see. It's like they're just, I agree with you. They've had all these issues. Class A is not playing well. They're not, things are happening. They're not, but they're still 14-9 because I feel like they think they're going to win, right? And that's part of it. So that to me is what really culture is, what you do, not what you say. And they play hard every night, and they expect to win.
And how good does that Kyle Manzardo trade for Aaron Savali look now from a couple years ago?
Right.
You got to get, there's not everybody complain, I don't really get into the money and stuff, but man, they just seem they're very well run, and they trade really, really well over the last 2 decades, don't they? They seem to always get the most out of all their trades.
They really do. They really do. Mike, I wanted to ask you, because you got to go on with your kids spring break. You got to go up to Camden Yards, and you got to go to PNC Park. How were the experiences there?
Yeah, so I'll keep it short, but Camden Yards is like the OG, of the new ballparks. It's just beautiful. It's in walking distance to the Inner Harbor of Baltimore, and it's only a block away from where Babe Ruth was born. And they have a nice little museum there if you've never been to Baltimore. Really short drive, short enough drive from Cleveland. I would recommend anybody go check out Camden Yards. Still a really nice park, and the kids got a kick out of tracking every time a ball gets hit out of the stadium onto Utah Street. Right in front of the big warehouse, they have a little plaque down there, so the kids got a kick out of seeing whose was the farthest home run hit. So that leads me to PNC Park. Growing up in Northeast Ohio, we had never been to Pittsburgh. It was only an hour and a half away, and we never went. So this was my first trip ever to Pittsburgh. I wanted to hate it so bad.
Such a nice park. It's such a nice place.
City. And the park is absolutely
so nice.
Beautiful. Yeah. And we were there, and we got to see Manzardo hit it into the Allegheny River, which has only happened, I think, 80 something times. So
yeah.
So that was kind of cool to see. But just the way they have that laid out with the river in the background and the city behind right field is just, and the bridges, absolutely gorgeous ballpark to go to. And I like what they've done surrounding the ballpark. between the Steelers stadium and PNC Park. Nice row of restaurants. You can walk by the river. It's really family friendly. It's something they could do in Cleveland because we have the lake and we have a river. But they've done a nice job. And I would rank PNC Park probably as we've been to about 18 ballparks now. It's probably my second favorite behind Progressive Field because, that'll always be number one.
What was the deal with all the booths, the radio and TV booths being at the top of the stadium?
Yeah, we sat right below one in Pittsburgh. I don't know.
I'm like, really? This is what you do? You can't put these guys who need to see what's going on and be a little bit closer? I'm kind of shocked by that. Well, that is great. And also, so your oldest, so Carter, he's a businessman, huh?
He did. So when we went on Saturday, we did not realize this, but it was Paul Skeen's bobblehead. And we were in line probably for 45 minutes just to get in the park and they only gave it out to the first 20,000 fans. And we were just going to see batting practice. We ended up with a bobblehead. As we're walking down the corridor, a Pirates fan offers Carter, my 12-year-old, $40 for his bobblehead. And he's saving up for a computer, so he took it.
It's like it's yours.
Yeah, I love it. So Jacob, if you ever go somewhere and you get a crappy, if we go to Pittsburgh and you get a JJ Watt or something, you feel free to sell it, okay? I
won't hesitate at all. Won't hesitate.
Right. I will pay you to take it.
There it is. There it is. Well, Lance, thank you so much for devoting your evening and time with us. We really appreciate it. Heather, thank you for joining us tonight. Mike, as always, but I'm not even going to go nuclear because I don't think I need to. There's a lot of things that I could talk about, but I'll save up all my energy to boo and rant.
A lot to be happy about right now.
There is a lot. So Lance, what's your game plan for the draft? Where will you be?
Well, actually, I'm going to be working Sports for Cleveland, part of Cleveland.com. I'll be doing like a live kind of breakdown of each pick, first couple rounds, especially on Thursday and Friday, and then Saturday will be up in the air. I'll be kind of on call for certain picks for certain people. So doing the same thing you guys are doing, watching and kind of breaking it down and see who's going where and why.
All right. Are you going to be down at the stadium for Thursday, or are you going to be in Berea? Where do they have you?
No, I'll be at there's a the Sports for Cleveland. The one I'm actually working on is in Twinsburg. So I'll be out in Twinsburg for that, for the first 3 rounds.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounds fantastic. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm sure it's going to keep you busy. Mike, where are you going to be? Are you going to be at home? Are you going to be at baseball games all day?
No, we're on a plane trip to go to a wedding Thursday night. So I will be getting the Wi-Fi on the plane so I can track all the drafts.
Okay. Well, definitely follow along on social media. Heather, we'll be talking and seeing you. Where are you watching now? Are you going to the Cavs game tomorrow night?
I was going to go to the Cavs game. I'm not. We're saving it for the second round. We're going to save it for the second round. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll be here watching the first round.
All right. Good. Jacob, will you be holding down the fort and watching the draft coverage?
I will be watching the first round. Yes.
Okay. Well, that's what you need to do. You need to figure out.
I won't be able to watch this second and third rounds live, but I will check ESPN. I will check.
Okay. Yeah. Tell your friends who are not sports fans that they need to become sports fans.
I will.
All right. So, Lance, thank you so much for joining us. This has been an absolute pleasure. Learned so much and love your insights. And thank you for everybody in the chat. Mike from the UK, this guy's nuts. He's up at all hours of the night. What do we got? It's 10 o'clock here. So it's about 4 a.m. there, 3 a.m., whatever in England. It's a little late for him. But anyhow, so Jacob, thank you very much. Heather, thank you. Lance, thank you. Mike, thank you. And with that, we will say good night. You have been tuned in to Going nuCLEar, full-blown coverage of the land here on the Fanatical Elves Network, part of Fans First Sports Network.